But it came at a cost. Another $100 million to be spent on green programs, land care, when we're actually deep in debt and should be cutting spending, not adding to it. Joining me is the panel, former Liberal Minister Peter Reith and former Labor campaign strategist Bruce Hawker. Bruce, most people watching will blame the government for this farce. It's inevitable whenever Canberra is in turmoil. But Labor was really playing the worst politics, wasn't it? Whatever tax the government suggested, Labor always wanted low one just to make the government look exactly like it now does, a shambles.
Yeah, well, probably a successful strategy, but as you showed at the beginning of your program just then, it looks bad for all of them. And it is very hard to take our politicians seriously when we do engage in that sort of horse trading. But no, Andrew, I wouldn't say Labor was the worst player there. I think the real culprit in the whole thing was the Prime Minister, who ended up putting $100 million on the table, which the Greens snatched up in a second in order to get their 15% rate. I mean, why wouldn't they do that? They've got to come out of this week with some sort of dignity attached to their legislative program and their government. And absent getting that through, it would have been an absolutely devastating moment for the Prime Minister, and God knows what that would have meant. So I think all around it was not a good day.
Sorry,
but
Bruce, I didn't mean to laugh so quickly.
Well, a very bad day for your side, Peter. And, you know, and I think there are times when you shouldn't really just try to spin it, but just accept that this is one of those events which demonstrated a whole lot of things that are wrong with our politics.
Well, I think it demonstrated what's wrong with Labor for a start, but also you make a deal with the Greens. It's fairly easy to negotiate a deal with the Greens. Just bring your wallet.
Look, I just want to say, you know, what a wonderful spin operator is our friend Bruce.
He's very
I mean,
good.
if it had been the other way around, he would have had exactly the totally opposite position.
Kidding?
And
that means you don't have an answer.
I respect you, Bruce, for that. I mean, it's complete bullshit. Excuse the French. The fact of the matter is, the government had a damn good week. In fact, they had a good fortnight. And let's face it, go back to the election. Andrew was calling for Turnbull to be sacked there and then on the moment.
He still is.
And before the election, he was saying, "I think we should let Labor win the election." You know, and the fact of the matter is, where we ended up, you can talk about the bits and pieces, but the truth of the matter is that the government, from the election to now, they've had a lot of success. A lot of people, very few people, did not expect it, and you were hoping they wouldn't, let's face it. And,
that's the second thing that's wrong. You pick when I haven't got a voice to rebut you.
Well, that's the best way to deal with it.
More success like this, and the Liberal Party will be down so far in the polls.
Andrew,
if this is success.
Andrew, you've been kicking Turnbull from the day he got in.
I have.
And the fact of the matter
because
is,
he's been doing things that should have
whether it was John Howard or anybody else you want to mention, looking back over people who have had difficult, you know, jobs to do, the fact of the matter is he got quite a lot through.
I tell you what.
Hey, can I just say this? Can I say this, Andrew? You know, I thought we were going to have Peter Reith on tonight. It turned out it was Shane Warne. I mean, that was just remarkable. He's really got that ball turning.
I don't know.
Fantastic.
Yeah, well, I think I've got
here's the government that went from 32 to 19 to 15, and you're saying that that's a great result. I don't think so.
Well, I think it's really, the one I think whose credibility really has taken a hit is Darren Hinch. I mean, 4 different positions, Bruce. He barracked for 4 different levels of tax. I mean, what on earth does it say about him, and what does it say about the dynamics of the Senate that people can just do this kind of stuff, get lots of publicity, blah, 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 make themselves look good and reduce the Senate to a laughingstock?
Exactly. Well, you won't get any argument out of me on that issue as well. I think the Senate is a joke. I think they should revisit the powers of the Senate, frankly, and certainly the way in which you have these characters coming along who, despite the Prime Minister's talk before the election of having a double dissolution in order to get rid of all these people, they're still there, and some have come back after 20 years. So the Senate is a joke, no doubt about that, and I think, you know, we should have a good hard look at the way in which it's structured and go back to tours on that issue.
Structured, ban it, scrap it.
Well, that's all, as you well know, Bruce, that's all very well, but the fact of the matter is that's not going to happen.
Because the Senate will now will vote for its preservation.
We all know that. So, I mean, in the end, and it was interesting actually to hear Turnbull talking about the situation. The one thing he didn't do was get stuck into...
Castro?
Sorry?
He hasn't got stuck into Castro.
I know, into Darren. Good point. Into Darren, and the reason is that they're going to have to deal with. They're going to have to deal with him again in the future.
Of course they are.
But listen, talking about Darren Hinch. Talking about Darren Hinch, though, yeah, well, that's true. Talking about Darren Hinch, the government's big thing was to get the Australian Building Construction Commission through, which I've barracked for, you've barracked for.
Yeah.
The point is that they've made so many concessions that Darren Hinch was on 3AW today saying, boasting, he said there was such fabulous legislation, I played the grab earlier, that now even Labor could live with it. He said Bill Shorten, when he comes in 2 years, won't scrap it because he could live with it. Yeah. Isn't that sad?
Well, but one of his
says everything.
But one of his it says everything. But one of his own said, as soon as we get back in again, we'll get rid of it. So I mean that came out today as well, I think. But look, the fact is they've got the institution in place and the ROC. Now don't forget the ROC. Everybody stops talking about the Registered Organisation Commissioner. Now I say to people, it's a bit like Al Capone. You know, don't go after the criminality, go after the money. And it's not quite the same, but I think that ROC's got a lot of potential in cleaning up some of the unions. Now, time will tell. They've got to get the right commissioner. There's a long way to go. There'll be all sorts of arguments, but I actually think there's some real positives there. And the other thing about it too is I think it gives the government some sense of credibility. Not a lot, I give you that. I know, Andrew, your views on this, but I think there's a bit of encouragement to them to say, well, you've done this on the IR, go a bit further now. I think that's possible.
Look, I think that's one way. But Bruce, isn't it?
They couldn't get any
I agree that they will. No, but exactly. Well, that's part of the problem. I can't be too hard on Turnbull because he's got a Senate, and the Senate is what the Senate is.
Oh, but hang on, Andrew.
The other hand, I have to say this. No, wait a minute. I just want to make a point and get your response to this. On this point that Peter has mentioned, that at least they've got it there, and now the argument is how much stronger to make it. Isn't the opposite actually true, that now that it's there, everyone say, well, that's done and dusted, we won't even go there?
No.
Well, it's quite likely. Look, I just think the whole thing is another demonstration of Turnbull's weakness. You know, he tried for this legislation. He went to the people as a trigger with this legislation, and yet he couldn't get it through without basically taking the teeth out of it. So I think there's a real risk that nothing will come of this piece of legislation at all, and maybe this rock that that we'll be building everything on will be some sort of a way through to cleaning up some of the problems in the industry. But I suspect not. And I think what we've seen here is what is at the core of Turnbull's problems. You know, this is not the first Senate that the government hasn't been able to control. It's more the norm rather than the exception for governments to have to deal with Senates. And this government has not been able to do it effectively. And in order to get its legislation through
But who can, Bruce? Who can? That's the problem. That is the problem.
That may be the problem.
Before we go, I need to talk about something. Bruce, we know you're a global warming true believer, so I'll leave you to have the last word. But first to Peter Reith for some sense on this. The electricity blackouts in South Australia.
Shocking.
Higher power prices today in Victoria.
Yeah, 10%.
Is it 10%?
They promised 4 and they gave you 10.
Within
and that's not the end
of it either. And that's even before Hazelwood is even closed. So it's going to go up even further.
Huge problem, yeah.
But the blackouts in South Australia, of course, because they didn't get the power from Victoria to back them up. The wind power wasn't there. Bang. This is our future, isn't it?
Well, it's a huge worry for the country, and this is all a result of Labor policy on these issues, and we've seen even worse attitudes with the fracking and, you know, stopping absolutely everything. But it's all going to come home to roost. And Daniel Andrews, he is a disaster for the state of Victoria. They talk about manufacturing, but the costs are going to go through the roof. I mean, it really is a huge worry. Forget about politics, party politics. This is a big worry for the state of Victoria. And these guys, these people have got no idea what they're doing. I mean, let's face it, Daniel Andrews probably did more to get rid of Hazelwood than anybody because he whacked on a whole lot of expenses.
The Liberals also have renewable
Well, that's true, but
that's the problem. There's no real
it's a big problem. It's a problem, no doubt.
All right, Bruce. You've got a 1-minute global warming sermon now. Why we have to have blackouts and higher power prices because it's good for us and it will save the planet. Off you go.
Well, there will always be blackouts, regardless of whether you're using fossil fuel or renewables. That's for a start. And Andrew, you can't give a guarantee that there won't be any blackouts from fossil-powered generators this year, this summer.
Step it up, Bruce. Get to the global warming bit.
Global warming is a real issue. Look what's happening to our barrier reef. It's a terrible, terrible problem. And that's a $2 billion, $3 billion industry.
That's global warming, is it?
That is global warming that's doing that. And we've got to be absolutely conscious of the realities.
I'll get a guy next week that'll have a word about that.
We've got to be very conscious. And by the way, the South Australian issue, as you said, was caused by a problem in Victoria, not in South Australia. Something was triggered in the grid in Victoria.
They had to rely
and it's an
on
interconnected
their own
system.
power then.
But they've always had that interconnector.
Yeah, they had to rely.
They've always had it, Andrew. It's not new. It's not new.
Bruce, may I just point out, when the interconnector goes down between Victoria and South Australia, you never get blackouts in Victoria. It's always on the other side of the border.
Actually, they did have blackouts in Victoria too. Those things happen, and they'll continue to happen. But we do have to do something about saving this planet. We have to do something about saving the planet. It might cost a bit more money, but
I don't know,
that's
Bruce.
a price we might have to pay.
It lacked a little bit of energy. You know, you lacked a bit of energy, a little bit of conviction, that holy roller stuff.
It won't matter to us. It won't matter to us when the world's gone all warm. We'll be dead.
Gentlemen, we got to go. No, it wouldn't matter to me.